Emma Twigg, welcome back to Between Two Beers.
Thank you. Excited for this one. It's been a while.
It has. October 1st, 2020, nearly 4 years ago, was when we came out to your house in Cambridge. One microphone in the middle of the table. It was an omnidirectional piece of crap from JB Hi-Fi, plugged into a laptop, and we drank Swedish beers of names we couldn't recognise. We couldn't pronounce, I should say.
Do you remember there were drug testers at your house before we arrived? We had
just left.
We had to wait for them to leave before we came in.
I mean, that hasn't changed. I've managed to avoid them today, though. So
nice.
Do you like this episode has kind of made us reflect back on, I guess, how far we've both come in 4 years, but going back to that place, like we were such a rinky-dink operation, and I remember listening back, and it was good chat, but it was also very different to what we do now. Like, does it take you back remembering that time?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been on this ride with you guys because, way back then I was listening, and I remember, listening to Eric a couple of weeks later, which I take credit for giving you his number.
Thank you.
And yeah, I feel like your success it's come gradually over time, and that's kind of a bit like my story in rowing as well. And it's lined up in many similar ways. But yeah, I do remember sitting around the table, and the beers were good. I haven't seen any today. But yeah, it's surreal to be here down the track, having what's happened in that interim in 2020 October. We must have had the postponement of Paris by that point.
Yeah,
which is weird to think about.
Yeah, that was the chat. It was dominated by COVID chat about what's going to happen. I think we were quite unsure.
Yeah, I haven't gone back and listened.
I think certainly when I talk about the episode that we recorded with you, I always preface it with that was before she won a gold medal, before she became a parent, even before Paris. Like it was. Yeah, it is actually thinking about it like really consciously now. So wild to think how different 4 years ago was.
A lot has happened in both of our worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here we are. Are you comparing an Olympic gold medal with Between Two Beers' rise?
100%.
Is that what I'm hearing? We're on this.
So you guys are even further in terms of the success story.
I did listen.
That's way too kind.
Yeah, that's over the top. One of the things we normally do is when we have a guest that comes back on, or any guest, we try to listen back to all of the other podcasts I've done. But you haven't really done any since.
No, I give you guys exclusivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm loyal. I'm a really loyal person.
Yeah,
so.
well, that's what I thought. Did you have such a bad experience that you didn't want to do anymore? But
No,
but seriously, like, is that was obviously a conscious choice, like not to. I'm assuming you got requests all the time, but like when you were training and when you're in those cycles, just better for you just to not be doing that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's a conscious thing. I think when you're full-time training, you do have limited hours in your day. But also you're just talking about yourself for hours, like it's for people to hear, I guess it's unique and different. But for me, sometimes I'm like, why do people want to hear this, But yeah, you guys are my number ones anyway. So here I am again. Seamus has been hustling me for a while now, and I said after Paris.
And there we are. Do you, just knowing, I guess you've got the advantage of having had a conversation with us before, but do you, when you sit down with a journo and you're kind of probably used to them rattling through like 4 or 5 questions, like is it a different preparation for you knowing that you're going to come and spend some time with us?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really prepare for any of those kind of things. I think, obviously a long form, you're going to get way more out of me. So maybe I'm a little bit more nervous about what you're going to ask, especially with some of the people you've been speaking to. But when you're talking to journos, it is very, you kind of get good at answering the same questions. So yeah, this is going to be a challenge.
See how we go.
Yeah.
Well, let's start at the end. Are you retired? What's your status?
Straight to the
gone big early.
Yeah,
the journalist question.
We should be asking this at the end so people listen to the end.
We'll do the tease. Don't worry, you've seen the social media. We'll do the tease.
No, I'm not retired. Short answer. Different focus, but I mean, I know that I'm well and truly done on flat water and rowing. But we have an exciting new version of our sport, which is coming into the LA Olympics. It's coastal rowing, and I feel like I see it as an opportunity to keep doing what I love, but also give back to the sport a little bit and developing something new. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Beach sprints, eh?
Yeah, very different. Running down a beach, getting into a much bigger boat, slalom course, 500 metres. The race takes roughly 2.5 to 3 minutes versus 7.5 minutes. It's like I liken it to the BMX version of track cycling or road cycling. It's just flip of a coin kind of stuff.
Those long levers on the sand, is that to your advantage?
Yeah, I'm not much of a sprinter, and like I say, I'm old now in rowing and in athletic terms. So whether I'm there in LA or not, I don't know. But next year for sure, I've committed to being at the World Champs and to hopefully spreading the sport a bit wider than just a couple of people, which is where it's at the moment.
Still in its infancy here?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, we've got some like Joe Sullivan. He's trying his hand at it. Couple of great junior rowers for the future, but we have limited boats in the country even, so it's kind of designed. It's replacing lightweight rowing, and it's designed to kind of infiltrate some of the smaller nations. You only require a couple of boats, so the Pacific Islands. These kind of athletes that are probably less enduros and a bit more sprinty are going to be awesome at it.
What about you getting into an America's Cup boat?
Oh, how good would that be?
It would be good, but I've heard little rumours that is that something that you've... Because I think the last time we spoke, was it speed skating? You were thinking you like dabbling with speed skating?
What you've learned about me is that I have all sorts of stupid ideas. But nah, I mean, America's Cup, I love watching that kind of stuff. I think my strengths are not in sailing, and in the women's side, the sailors sail the boats and they don't have the grunters like they do the men. But who knows? Who knows into the future what the women will be doing? Again, I'm reaching the time in my athletic career where I'm probably going to need a Zimmer frame rather than adding a whole lot of strength and power.
I've just had like a flashback. I feel like during the Women's World Cup football that was here as well, you were talking about maybe I'll come back as like a goalkeeper.
Honestly, when you're young, you have this warped perception of how good you are at sport, and then you go and try those sports and you realise very quickly that there's a reason that there's a 10,000 hour theory and that it's more than just being fit and strong. It's there's a lot of technical elements in pretty much every sport. So I've matured, I think.
Because you had a little dabble at cricket as well, didn't you?
I did, and that didn't end well.
What happened specifically?
I actually got a little start with the Northern District's A team, and again, just feeling pretty good about myself and my abilities. I decided to launch myself at a ball that was coming relatively fast on really hard ground and dislocated my shoulder. So that didn't end well.
How far out was that from competition?
Oh, it was right after Tokyo, so it was me trying to test the waters and have a bit of fun.
Expand my horizon.
It didn't go well, and I'm still suffering the consequences. Luckily, rowing is a under shoulder sport, so there's no dislocations happen kind of above the head.
Yeah.
So we got through Paris.
Rowing New Zealand would have loved that one.
You've done what?
Yeah. Okay, so this section is called Meet Emma. And I asked your brother, Jamie Twigg, about what Emma's like. So I want to read you what he said. He said, her public persona isn't too far off actual Emma, but she's way more of a goofball behind closed doors. I can't count how many times we've been witness to her in a bikini giving us a Mr. Universe-style muscle pose or whipping out her butt to randomly moon me. She's had a deeply serious and one-eyed approach to her rowing, but she's a bit of a clown when she's not in the water. I guess what the family has seen is the journey from the start. And when I say start, I mean like when she was at primary school, right? She pretty much said to mum at primary school, I'm going to win a gold medal, and it was locked in from there. I rowed pretty competitively, but I went down to Otago University to go make sure that I still had a degree in the back pocket and go and have some fun down there at that age. But Emma was straight up to Karapiro, and I think she walked into a law lecture for about 5 minutes and went, nah, that's not me, and walked out again. So it's been that consistent, single-minded focus, possibly to the detriment of other aspects of her life at times, but eventually she's ended up at a place where she's really balanced, and that's why she ended up getting gold. As it ended up, eventually she came full circle back to there's more to life than just rowing.
Yeah, not bad, Jamie.
Fair? Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think he's nailed it. The thing that annoys me about my brother is that he always gives advice, and at the time I'm like, whatever. And then, 3-4 months, a year, 2 years down the track, he's right, and it's really annoying. It's an annoying trait having a brother. But yeah, I guess he has been there from the start. I always say Jamie's, he's, apart from mum and dad, my number one fan. He's been there through the thick and the thin, and has always been extremely encouraging as well. So, he's pretty much summed it up. I think in my early years there was that real focus on winning medals, and what I thought was success then was winning medals. And I think I enjoyed myself in my younger years, but also didn't really have the perspective of kind of more to life. And as I've gone on, I've appreciated that, and also with potentially my results have realised that having a medal doesn't necessarily change who you are, and your friendships and your relationships. And I always say this whenever I speak anywhere, I talk to kids, that that's the important stuff when you hang up the oars, and it probably took me hanging up the oars to appreciate that fully, and to his point, I guess, has allowed me to come back with probably this inner peace that has allowed me to be successful.
It was quite interesting talking to him, because he spoke about Rio, and I think in an interview afterwards you said that you were done and you were retired, and he told me he was standing next to your mum and he kind of whispered in her ear, "She'll come back."
Yeah, and like I guess my retirement was kind of made official for me at that point, because that was my initial reaction in Rio. But I never officially retired. Like I never took myself off the anti-doping list and all of those things that you definitely do when you're retired. So I think I went away thinking that I was done, and I didn't hutch and all for 2 years. I did all sorts of other things, kept fit, did 9-man, ran a marathon, all those things that endurance athletes think are fun things to do. And then realised near the end of that actually, no, I had more to give, and I still wanted to be super fit, and I still wanted to be training. So in my head I was like, well, why aren't you putting this to good use?
You've taken us out of, I've got a very planned structure here, and you've disrupted it. We've gone there too soon. No, I wanted to ask you about the comment from primary school. Did you really say, do you remember really say in primary school, I want to win a gold medal?
I remember from a very, very young age of saying to mum that I wanted to be an Olympian, to go to the Olympics. And I was just passionate about sport. I played all sorts of sport, and got quite into hockey. And to Jamie's point, when I want to do something, I definitely get a singular focus. I remember having like a journal, and you'd get sent back in the day magazines to your door in different sports, and one was a hockey mag, and I'd cut out all the Mandy Smiths and people like that.
Oh, we all did that. No, we all did that.
And then when she got together with Dean Barker, my mind was blown at that point, because I was a keen sailor as well. So I had all of that kind of stuff stuck. When you're a kid, I don't know if you guys did it, you did Duracell on your books, and always my themes would be around sport and Olympics and hockey, and then it kind of went into rowing. And being a Hawke's Bay girl, the Ever Swindell twins were, my role models back then. So 100% I had dreams of going to an Olympics. I wouldn't say maybe winning medals, but that would have come.
He also expanded on that singular focus and suggested that, and you've downplayed your ability with hockey, but did you have like an under 15 or a secondary schools New Zealand hockey trial that you turned down in order to pursue the rowing element in your teenage years?
Yeah, so there became it was literally the same week, I'm going to say. It was either go and trial for that under 15 Tiger Turf New Zealand team, and that was going to Australia for a tri-series or something. And then it was the under 19 rowing trial, and that trip was to Athens, Greece. And so it became pretty easy decision that I was wanting to go to Athens and not Aussie, and that was pretty much it right then. It was, people spend a lot of time deciding what way you're going to go in sport, but it was literally what opportunity was there in rowing versus hockey. And I also think I was realistic about my talents in hockey. I was a little bit bigger and maybe not as quick and fit, and I had to really work hard to be good at hockey, whereas rowing, it came a bit more naturally.
Yeah, that high centre of gravity works against you in hockey, eh?
I was always put in the backs, and I didn't want to be a back. I wanted to be in the middle. There was always this little... I was good, but I wasn't amazing.
We're the best in the world.
I was playing like the Kayla Sharlins of this world.
Flexing that knowledge, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, what about his comment about walking into a law lecture for 5 minutes and decided, did you know straight away that wasn't the path for you?
Yeah, again, that was probably, when you're young, you look at the people around you, your role models, and my dad was a lawyer, his sister was a trained lawyer, his dad was a lawyer, Jamie had gone and done law. Poor old mum, she was a teacher, and I didn't want to be a teacher. But I just, that was where I perceived my strengths to be. I wasn't much into kind of the maths and sciences at school. It was a more English drama type girl, sport. So thought law was where it was at. And literally day one, I just looked at the readings and I thought, nah, not me. And went and did a comms degree instead, which was awesome.
Good degree, that.
Everyone does a comms degree.
Good degree,
if you don't know what to do.
University of Waikato comms degree?
Yeah.
Good degree, that.
Are you an alumni?
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
I think I was the first intake of that BCS.
I was probably the second.
So Jamie gave us a couple of stories. One we've agreed not to talk about.
Yeah, thank goodness for that.
We cleared that one with you beforehand.
I'm really pleased he gave me a heads up. Otherwise, I'd have been sitting here squirming.
But the other one he's told us about is ask about the time that you chased Jamie with a soccer ball.
Yeah, I mean that's just some brotherly, sisterly love. It was a rugby ball. He's
maybe he's adjusted it for us.
Basically, I was annoyed with him and chased him and threw the ball at his head, and it happened to coincide. Or he ducked, and as I'd thrown it, it went through a stained glass window at home, and Mum was walking behind the stained glass window. So luckily, she didn't get hurt. But I then turned around and knew that I was in big, big trouble, and ran away from home, in inverted commas, for a good, I don't know, probably hour. Sat down there sulking, as you do when you're young.
Yeah. The other info he gave us is what you're like on holiday when you holiday together. And I'm not sure how frequent that is, but it's like little window into like you always need to be active and doing something. It's like day one's fine, day two is a little bit of restlessness, and at day three you just kind of like need to be go.
Can't sit still was his words. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. Yeah, I definitely like to be on the go and have an adventure, and I think he hates it too because when I get bored, I just start picking on him and finding
pesting.
Yeah, basically being a massive pest.
Are you a big pest in the HPSNZ gym at Cambridge as well?
Oh, I'm not the biggest pest.
What do you mean by pest?
Oh, nothing untoward, but just kind of like pesty behaviours. I mean, you're not sliding into DMs or anything like that, but like, not re-racking weights. Is that a Twig trait?
I'm knowing exactly who this is coming from, which is rich from this person. But I mean, gyms are made to be used, right?
I think it's good etiquette to put your weights back though after you've finished.
I'm not the best example of attention to detail, or I have to try hard at these kind of things. When I listened to Lisa's episode, I admired her, professionalism, and I'd say I'm probably on the other end of the spectrum in that regard.
That's interesting because I would imagine you would be quite similar. Like my understanding of what an elite athlete would be, I kind of felt like you would be at the same end of the spectrum.
Yeah,
but
maybe in mindset, but in habits. I think anyone in our team would laugh at the way that I show up to rowing. And it's got worse as I've got older and I've got a kid and other things going on. But literally, my alarm goes off in the morning at 6:30, and I'll be on the water rowing at 5:07 because I just literally roll out of bed, do what I need to do. Get down there, get on the water, get it done, get home. Whereas some are down there for it. The men's 4 I always have banter with because they're there an hour before stretching and, doing all the 1%ers. And don't get me wrong, I do. There are 1%ers in life that I do adhere to, but it's Emma's Express is my nickname. I just get in there and get it done.
That works for you though, right? Like
and that's
20
the point.
years of
it works. Everyone works in different ways, and I think that's one real big learning I've had from my career is that you can't cookie cutter anything because everyone is wired so differently and gets finds security or gets confidence from doing things in their own way. And so, in rowing it's really interesting because you're trying to mould, in most cases, different people's personalities into boats and make it all unison. But a lot of the time, I think great coaches have the ability to kind of allow the individuals to be them and then bring it all together in other ways. So, yeah, different strokes for different folks.
With that lens on, do you do different stuff in the gym to some of your other rowing contemporaries? Like in terms of your training with, is it Angus Ross?
Yeah, Gus. Yeah. I mean, and that's, again, my athletic career has evolved as well. And as I've understood probably who I am more as an athlete and what I need and what works and what doesn't, and then just have invited different perspectives in, I think has been really interesting, because that's where I've made some of my biggest gains. And again, there's, even now as I look to a different sport, you're presented with a way of doing things. But why are we presented that? Is it because it works, or has someone else tried something different? Like there's a lot of trial and error, I think, and trying to find those other little 1%ers that make you the best in the world.
So with the beach sprints, are you doing like stuff like power sled in the gym to get that kind of speed?
Yeah, like you'll be training. The thing that's exciting for me is turning my body into something different, because it's more power based, it's less endurance. Who knows? It's a blank canvas right now, and that's what I find exciting. And we might actually get a year or 2 years in and go, actually, it's the same physiology as you need for flat water, and those are the people still being successful. But we would have tried something else, and the alternative to that is that we could try something new and do it completely differently and be 20 times faster than anyone. So it's a cool space.
All right, two little quick ones from Tori Peters. We sort of hinted at dropping the name.
Yeah.
We're going to it. She said, we're pretty competitive in the gym, but ask her if she has the biggest guns at the HPSNZ gym in Cambridge. I'll be interested to know her answer.
The biggest guns? She's having a laugh. Have you seen Tori's guns? They're huge.
Are they? Okay.
So it's definitely her then.
It's definitely. She wants everyone to know that she's got the biggest guns, and
okay.
I'm happy to say that.
She's also going down a little cricket side career at the moment, right?
Yeah, I saw she played for Cambridge, or in Cambridge this weekend. So yeah, you might have to get her on.
Following the Twig model, hope she doesn't dislocate her shoulder, because she quite needs that for her.
She's actually got my kit, so it got retired very quickly.
And the other perhaps stitch-up one is she asked how much Mickey D's or KFC you're having these days. She's not adverse to it after training. Has that stopped since you've hung up the oars?
It definitely has. Yeah. I mean, again, I feel like I'm not painting the best picture of a high-performing athlete right now.
Transitioning athlete.
No, it's we do so much work on the water that I like to treat myself every now and then.
She reckons you've burnt the calories before you even set foot in the gym, so it's warranted. It's earned.
Yeah. I'm glad T's giving me a little bit of props in amongst the ribbing.
So we did a live Q&A with you last week at Maid in Hamilton. I felt a little bit bad actually at the start because we went a bit off script. I was going to tell you the things, I told you the things we were going to talk about, and then I was like, tell us about the time Ronaldinho hit on you. Tell us about being a roommate with Roger Federer. And you're like, we didn't talk about this. But it was really cool. Like, I really enjoyed it. And one of the other sort of quirks of it, which was unprompted, was we got Mahe Drysdale, who was in the audience, to come up and talk about, was it the chimp in the cage?
Yeah, the Chimp Paradox. Yeah.
The Chimp Paradox. But afterwards, I had a really good chat with him, and then I had a phone call with him later in the afternoon. No, but like what came through is because I kind of just assumed you were like rowing friends, but he's like, no, we're actually best. Like he described you as best friends, and I kind of wanted to just talk about Mahe for a little bit, like what impact he's had on your life, career, like what you've learned from him, and how it's helped.
Yeah, I mean, Mahe was pretty integral in me starting out in the program, because he had just started in the single. 2005 was his first year in the single, and he was an example of someone that just said, right, I'm going to be in that boat and I'm going to be successful at it. He'd been in another crew, but the funny thing is about single sculling, there's all these opportunities to race outside of New Zealand, outside the New Zealand team. And what I love about Mahe is that he's determined and self-focused and confident, but he's also extremely caring when it comes to others and helping others out. And from a very young age, he took myself and Nathan Cohen under his wing and took us over to Europe. And, I wouldn't have a clue where to start with, hiring cars or flights and all these kind of things that normally would be done for you with, the admin at Rowing NZ. But he kind of took that on board, did it all for us, and saw that as an opportunity for him to have even more fun over there as well. And we got to go to these awesome races, head of the Charles in America, and started out this kind of yearly, we ended up calling it Big Cat Tours. It was another story altogether. But he just embraced us, and he taught me a lot about how hard you have to work to be successful in terms of, what we did to our bodies. Like, he planned the most ridiculous cycling journeys, which 30-year-old Emma would be like, no, I'm not doing that. But 19-year-old Emma was like, yeah, if Mahe's doing it, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And, we're up the top of these coals in the darkness because we'd arrived late. And there's just never a moment with Mahe where he would not do something that he had planned to do, even if we were freezing up the top of a 2,000-metre col. But at the same time, he was so conscious of me and taking care of me. I would be descending in the dark, which isn't ideal, but he would be like, I'm going to go and get the car, I'm going to race ahead and I'll come back and get you. So little things like that where, people don't really see that side of Mahe, but he has been a massive part of my career and we've had some great times. He's a work hard, party hard kind of guy.
Seems like a lot of rowers are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the nature of what we do, yeah.
Yeah. So is that, by example, you're seeing him do it, and that mental toughness, that mindset, you're kind of just understanding what it really takes to be the best in the world?
Totally, and I think he was an example prior to Mahe. My perception of what was required to be the best was very kind of single-minded, not a hell of a lot of fun involved, miles and miles. You turn up, you're part of this kind of regime. Mahe kind of bucked that trend in a way. He very much adhered to those principles, but he was into having a great time whilst doing it. He would have kept rowing until he was 50 if he could, I reckon, because he just loved it. And for me, that was a great example of, you can have both. And actually, if you're working hard, then you can enjoy yourself and you can make these friendships with different people all around the world. And that's equally part of the sport is just, the grind. And he was probably the first guy too that probably stood up for himself a little bit in terms of the administration and just, believing in himself. So, yeah, he sent a lot of examples in many different ways. And then, we talked about last week at our little chat the impact that he had in the lead into Tokyo, but you might want to save that for later.
Well, can we go there now?
Yeah.
We can go there because the chimp in the cage?
Yeah, Chimp Paradox.
I'll be honest, I thought he was saying chin.
Oh.
The whole time he was like, because bad acoustics, and I was like, she's like, you got to take your chin out, and I was like, what is he talking about? Trying to think.
Can we first reflect at the fact that we gave him the microphone and he brought himself up the front?
Yeah, Stevie left the position. Stevie went rogue.
That's classic Mahe too. Like, yeah, no worries, I'll come up and tell the room.
Well, I think he was still in campaign election mode, right? Because he did you see that in his future by chance as well? Like getting the mayoralty of Tauranga?
It doesn't surprise me because I think it takes a certain person. And I think he'll be great at it as well, just with his background in finance and stuff like that. But it doesn't surprise me.
So go, Chimp Paradox.
Chimp Paradox. It stems from Bradley Wiggins is how he explained it to me. That basically in the lead up to Tokyo, there was a period of time where I was really battling with self-confidence and toying. I guess it was the scar tissue. I'm going to call it scar tissue because Gus always talks about that too. Of my fourth places previously and whether I was making the right decision to remain in the single scull, because there's always part of me that thought, is there more opportunity to be winning medals in bigger boats? And I'd toyed with the idea of getting in a double scull many times throughout my career, and for whatever reason it hadn't played out. And so at that time actually the double was being reselected. It was I guess there was all sorts going on in that space, and so it kind of brought back a little bit some of those feelings around the other games and started to make me question whether I was making the right choice in the single and also what I'd feel like if I went to Tokyo and was fourth again. And I obviously at that time, a couple of months out from the Olympics, you're in your peak of volume and tiredness and it's all getting a bit much. And after one training session, I came in and it hadn't gone well. And I just burst into tears with my physiologist and she kind of picked me up and said all of the right things. And again, a great example of having the right person there at the right time. But it sparked in me this thought that I needed to address that scar tissue if I was going to be successful in Tokyo. And so in discussions with my coach Mike and different people in my team, they were like, go and chat to Mahe because he's done it before and it's been successful. And so just rocked up to his house and he's like, you just got to address the doubt And he said one way that I like to do it is this, which is this chimp paradox of, everyone has a chimp on their shoulder. Everyone has someone telling them that they can't do it in their head. But it's how you deal with those thoughts that allow you to kind of progress. And so gave me a few techniques. And one of the things that we did was write down all of these thoughts that I'd been having, and not just little, but just anything that I felt like might resurface. And by doing that, I guess, first of all, it got it out of my head, and I could articulate that to Mike, my coach. And then I went through with Mike and wrote an answer almost to each one of those thoughts. And the powerful part of that was also then giving it to my team. And so they were all aware of things or, things that might set me off. And funnily enough, when in Tokyo, that did happen. And one of them was that I dreamt that I'd got fourth again. Because sometimes I'd had these random dreams and woke up and thought, thank God that was a dream.
Wow, you actually would have dreams.
Yeah, very vivid, thinking that I was in that spot again. And it happened in Tokyo. And I think it was around the time that the double was racing, and they'd won a silver medal. So the single scull's always the last race of the regatta. And that was part of it too. I knew that people would be going before me, and we had a great chance of success of a lot of our girls and guys, and how I'd feel if they had achieved that success and I was still to race. So all of these things I'd written down, and my team then were able to keep me in the right headspace. The morning after I'd had that dream, I said to Caroline, I was like, oh, it happened, And Caroline straight away just was like, it's all good, part of it, Twiggy, you're the best single sculler the world's ever seen, you're in the fittest. You're the fittest and fastest you've ever been, and just all these kind of positive affirmations, which are part of that whole tell the chimp to bugger off.
So that was they were part of it too. They knew that if this came up, to give you positive affirmations.
Yeah. So I guess that chimp paradox is taking your mind from a negative mindset, one of doubt, of fear, of all of those things that naturally happen in day-to-day life, and replacing it with the positives. And I found myself doing that whole week, really. And even again in Paris, it's funny, you learn a technique and then it's with you forever. And when I reflect on my Rio campaigns, I can see where, mentally I lost it. It was what Mahe did in that moment. I could have read the book myself, but I guess, having him articulate that to me had a lot of impact at the time, and it was probably just exactly what I needed. And it was also a line in the sand in those 2 months of, right now we just go out there and we hurt ourselves in every single session and push our limits. And he kind of gave me a bit of that as well, this is where you make the gains. And so, it was a turning point.
That's so cool. Have you done it many times since? Is it something that you can do in regular life?
It's funny, I said to Mike pre-Paris, we need to do this again. And actually, when I thought about it, a lot of the negative thoughts that I had then still existed. Even though I'd won that gold in Tokyo, I still had similar feelings. And so, we kind of just applied the same principles. But I think it's something you also get better at as well. I didn't feel the real need to go there to the same extent, but I think I just, because I was better at dealing with that and better with getting myself in the space that I needed to be mentally. And actually, I felt a lot of similarities between those regattas in terms of how I approached each race. Mahe, I also had on the phone with me in Tokyo after every race. He'd be doing some number crunching in the background and giving me a call, and we'd just talk through the race and talk about the next one. And so Paris, I did the same again, just came, out of nowhere, and he loved it.
It's one of the coolest things in the conversation with Mahe was he told me what it was like after you won gold, and he said, I remember watching that final, just from the first stroke, I was like, yeah, she's got this. And that would be up there with one of my proudest moments, including the gold medals I won. I was just watching her achieve what she's capable of.
Yeah.
Him and Eric both were blubbering.
I think we all were. Obviously, Stephen and I are not world champion rowers. Yeah. But I recall watching it back home as well, and just being and I think because we'd had you on the podcast, it was so fucking awesome to see.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, had a guy come up to me on Friday night say the same. He's like, I was in tears, and I think a lot of people were, but I think it strikes a tone with people because it was such a long time, and obviously the story is the story. And I think for Mahe, he was a big part of that too, right? So it's like, you know, when you move into coaching, you become part of that result in a way, and that's probably what he felt. Eric was the same. Like, Eric was another man that I'd lean upon in those times. Had, you know, many occasions where I took him around 6 beers and he gave me, you know, some advice too. So yeah, that's the beauty of, I guess, what we do in our team and the success that other people have had, that, you know, like how many people get the opportunity to just knock on someone's door and have the wisdom that those guys had.
I saw a moment there. You're obviously a little bit.
Seamus.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, I'm easy to make cry though.
I'm not trying to make you cry, but I mean, has he spoken to you a bit, like, in that tone before? Because sometimes we find people say stuff to us that we relay on to other people, and they're like, "Oh, I've never." Yeah,
I know. I think anyone that speaks about that moment gets me a little bit emotional because it does take me back, and because I'm such a baby. But yeah, like Mahe, we did another panel on Friday, and he.
What?
Yeah, I know.
We didn't know about that.
Excuse
me. Sorry, guys.
That didn't come through us.
So he said the same thing then, and it does make me well up a bit. Yeah, not to have that kind of impact that someone gets emotional about a rowing race. Yeah, it's big.
There will be listeners here that haven't listened to the first episode. I would recommend after this going back. We cover this in a lot of detail, but I'm just going to sort of set the platform for the next chapter we're going to talk about. All right? So Beijing was your first Olympics in 2008. You finished 9th. London 2012, you finished 4th. In 2014, you become a world champion, aged 21. In 2016 in Rio...
I think the maths is off. There's a head shake here.
21, a world champion? 21? No.
No.
I don't think so.
How old were you?
2014. Let's do the maths.
Sometimes Wikipedia will be wrong.
I was
21 at the first Olympics, yeah.
21 in Beijing.
Yeah.
And that was 2008. So fast forward to 2014, I'm closer to 27, 26, 27.
Should we start that all again? No, we're leaving that in. We're leaving that in.
Okay, so 2016, like we were talking about, 4th finish, you retired, and I think you called it my worst nightmare. And then you take 2 years off. And before we get back to why you came back, like, what was that? I didn't even sort of briefly mention it. What was that 2 years like? Was it a bit of soul searching, figuring out different jobs, like seeing what else was out there?
It was an amazing couple of years. I think both years that I've stepped away and done something different. So when I did my Masters in 2015, off the back of being a world champion.
At 21.
21. Smart. Yeah, both times, I think, being so far out of my comfort zone, away from at the institution, I guess, and just having the freedom to kind of experience life and different cultures and different people and different languages have been huge years of personal growth. And that 2016-17 year was exactly that. I just forgot about rowing, literally wrote myself a bucket list of things that I wanted to do. Ironman, marathon, climbed Kilimanjaro, rode my bike up gazillions of coals and lived the Swiss dream for the year pretty much. And in amongst that, I had this opportunity to work at the International Olympic Committee. And I very quickly into that job, whilst I loved the people and the environment and living the Swiss dream in terms of accessibility to mountains and all the things that I love doing, it kind of confirmed to me that this isn't what I wanted to do work-wise, and maybe also reinforced that I had a little bit more to give in the boat.
So bring us back to rowing. So you've had all this stuff happen. You're committed to another campaign. Like, what happened? What changes? How are you processing it?
I think what I learned when I was away and reflected on a couple of things. Firstly, the whole medal thing. That was a really hard thing for me to kind of get my head around, was that I felt I had equal potential and talent to a lot of my peers that had been really successful. And the medal really defined the experiences that I had after the games, you know, in terms of invites to things and being able to go to a school and show a kid a medal and see their face light up, like all these little bits that having something tangible allows for. And then also, I guess the second part to it was just realising that actually I love being an athlete and I love having this intense focus and goal. I love the people, most of the people at Rowing NZ, and you know my colleagues or peers, and the same. You know, when you're in an environment like that, a lot of people are wired in the same way, and so you know that was massive for me. But yeah, I think that realisation that it's a really limited time in your life to be doing what I was doing and chasing a dream and being super fit, and I still wanted to do it. And so how would I go back into an environment and make myself better and do it differently and make it a success? And a lot of that was, I felt that in those previous campaigns, a lot of decisions had been made out of my control. And I wanted to come back and kind of take hold of that and create a team of people around me that really believed in me, because I knew a lot of people did. I remember Rob Waddell in the car after Rio. For whatever reason, I found myself in a vehicle with him, and he's like, "You're not done, Twiggy. You're not done." And I was like, "Well, Rob, I think I am." And he was like, "You've got this. Like, you can do this." And little bits like that along the way, they kind of stuck with me. Gordy Walker was another one that said the same. And these are in the moments like hours after my race in Rio. And so they were probably all sitting in the back of my mind as well. But I knew that I needed people like that around me that really believed in what I could achieve, and that I also needed to take control of, how I did things, how I trained, and I reflected on why I hadn't won. And so, technically I felt I could be better. Mentally I felt I could be better. And physically there were some holes as well. So how do I fix that?
So who was the first piece of the puzzle around you, that team behind the team?
Well, Angus Ross kind of fell into that spot straight away, because when I returned, it sounds stupid now, but the high performance manager at the time wasn't a great friend. Not a friend. He wasn't a huge supporter. So when I asked to come back and rejoin the team, he basically said, "Oh yeah, you're going to have to go and trial through the high performance pathway, basically. You're going to have to show us your stripes before you're allowed to come back into the Row New Zealand gym." Which, I'd been to 3 Olympics, I'd been the national champion for many years, and
world champion,
been a world champion, all of that. So I was a little bit miffed by that, but felt that was classic of the environment at the time. And so then thought, oh well, bugger yeah, I'll go and find someone to look after me. And so actually when I did my little bike ride back from Switzerland, Rebecca Waddell had been coached by Angus in athletics, and she said, "He's an absolute guru, he will turn you into a machine, go and talk to him." And credit to Angus and who he is, he went straight to the CEO of High Performance Sport and said, "This is ridiculous, you need to get her in a gym." Like she's been part of the program for years, and the CE agreed, and away we went. And so from that moment, I guess when I was taken back into the Rowing NZ environment, I was encouraged to go back to their people. But I said, this guy was here when you guys weren't, and I want to keep working with him. And it was one of the best moves I made, because he then led me to Quinny, my sports psych. Mike, my coach, was another person that came up to me and said, "You can do this." So yeah, just little people like that eventually, as the pieces came together, I felt like I was in a really great space.
I want to speak to that little pause there, because Jamie's given us some information about politics and rowing, and I want to read his words and then you see if you align with them or whatever. So he said, "It's wild the influence that an administration can have over a sporting person's career, and by extension their whole personal life and their whole outlook. That generation's largely moved on. It's very different now in terms of selection. If we went back to when Emma and I were first doing our selections, you'd go out on the water, you'd be put in a boat with 3 or 4 other people and race another boat, and they'd swap you around. You might go out and win every single race that you do, and then you get to the end of the week and they say, you've not been put in for whatever reason. We don't think that you're committed to it, or we don't think you're this or that. There was a little bit in the selection policy that was like selectors' discretion, and the number of people that got caught under selectors' discretion was just wild. Joseph Sullivan, for example, had to go to the courts to get in. Nowadays, they've got sports scientists in there, and they've got way more figures and numbers and looking at all of that data way more. I think they've improved a lot, and Emma can probably tell that story. But basically, she had to be the fastest person in the country, and then she had to be selected by Rowing New Zealand, and then she had to get over there and actually perform, get her funding, and come back and do that all over again for the next Olympics for like 20 years. Is that the side of rowing that people perhaps don't see?
Yeah, and I think he's right. I think we definitely have progressed in that space, and there was a period of time I think there was a Facebook group at some point that was set up with like disgruntled, former rowers that were, had issues with the way that the selection played out. And I think the brutal part in those days too is that you weren't selected, and that was it. You were kind of cut off and decision made. And many times people felt extremely unjust, and you're sitting there in front of selectors trying to plead your case. And that's where I guess my passion for athlete voice and that whole athlete wellbeing space right now has come from, because some of the moments in my career where I've felt absolutely defeated, it seems so logical in my mind. And I'm a single sculler as well. First across the line, it's pretty simple. In fact, I remember one trial where I knew that I was going to be picked in the single, and for whatever reason during the trial, something don't think I'd had an opportunity that I thought I should have in another boat, and so I got put out to do a time trial, and I just paddled down. And the selectors brought me in and pretty much, gave me a big hurry up, and I said, wasn't feeling very well today. So little things like that where I've really annoyed, the powers that be, and kind of have put my foot down and stood up for things where then I probably have felt the consequences of later in some of their decisions. But I guess that's who I am, and that's the way that I've always approached it. I've always felt if you're first across the line, you're first across the line, and it's up to me to get myself into that position. But in my younger years, I probably didn't quite comprehend how some of those decisions would impact my eventual performances.
Yeah, that whole notion of qualifying the boat always kind of is really interesting. Like, I come from team sports, so I get it. You qualify a team, and then you see who will be selected out of like the final 20 names that get there. But you've rowed the boat across the line the fastest than anyone. Surely that's yours to take by default. That's kind of how sport works. Yeah,
and that's the thing. The way that our qualification works, you qualify the seat, and anyone can take it. And again, in many instances, it's at the whim of the selection panel just to decide who that is. And it can be, it can be a personality difference that decides if you're in the boat or not. But now, we're definitely in a place where there's, we've pushed for far more communication throughout a selection process. So people are not turning up to trials and getting surprised by anything. They know exactly where they stand and who they've got to beat and what their performance metrics are. And that's come as a consequence, I guess, of funding into the program, which allowing us to have those people to deliver that information. But back in the day, it was coach, selector, this is it. And if you were offside or there's that huge power imbalance that I think we're chipping away at, but it's still really hard for a young athlete to articulate what they're feeling, or if they've got issues with in an environment where it's so cutthroat. And I guess that's high performance sport.
Is that where someone like Kelly, your agent, kind of comes to the fore as well in terms of helping you with those conversations? And is that kind of her role in that team that you talk about?
Yeah, I guess when I talk about that team, one of the things that I highlighted from those campaigns was that I would be using a lot of energy in those battles, and how could I mitigate that and just take that load off me? And Kelly certainly is that person for me. But I feel very lucky to be in a position where I can have Kelly, because I think of all of our team, I'm the only one with a manager. So then a lot of those really tough conversations are left to be had by either senior athletes for the younger rowers, which then again it adds workload to them, or the athletes themselves, and that's where I think the space that I'm hoping to work in now is around our athlete union, and a big part of that is just having people that have retired that are available for these young kids to go in and plead their case, I guess, and represent them independently of anyone else.
Okay, so we're caught up to when we chatted last, 2020. Mahe sort of said that it probably worked in your favour that the games got delayed because it was a really difficult period, right? There was COVID, there was other complications, and your coach Mike had a really terrible accident sort of quite close to when the games would have been. So can you take us to the lead up to what was going on?
Yeah, I feel it's one of these things, like Mahe's career was potentially cut short, well, not short, it was a long career, but he didn't end up in Tokyo potentially because of that extra year, whereas for me it was almost the opposite. It gave me an extra year. I'd only given myself 2 years worth of runway to get back to where I needed to be. So the first year I came back, I won a silver medal, so I qualified the boat and I knew I was in a good space. But actually in the lead up to the initial games, North Island Champs, my coach Mike was actually getting up nice and early to go and do some tweaks to my boat. And he'd told me the night before that he'd done those. So this is I've all worked out in retrospect. But he got up real early and was heading into town to change his car, and a car crossed the centre line and hit Mike. And that kind of was, again, like when you talk about turning points or sliding doors, and that campaign was massive because all of a sudden Mike was lucky to be alive, first and foremost. So it was a huge thing. But he also was staring down the fact that he wouldn't recover in time to be in Tokyo with us. And so I remember I spent every second day I'd drive into Hamilton Hospital and be sitting with him at his bed and be like, come on, Mike, like we can do this. And he's having all sorts of operations on his legs. Was lucky to keep one of them. And we were kind of, I guess I was trying to do for him what he'd done for me, which was, create this plan and get him motivated. And I really wanted him to be in Tokyo with me. And so then we went through a phase. He was coaching Mahe as well at the time, of trying to put an interim coach in. And then 2 months later, COVID came, and all of a sudden we were given a whole nother year. And Mike actually said to me after his crash, I'm going to be ready to come with you to Tokyo. So you go and do the first European campaign, come home, and I'm going to be ready. And sure enough, when I was rowing, I went out for a paddle, and he drives his truck down to the lake. Definitely shouldn't have been driving, but he was determined to be there, like standing and being like, look, I'm ready. And it was exactly that day that he said that he would be. So again, like, in that time there were so many bits that, when I was doing my 2K test, I did a personal best that I haven't beaten, because in my head I was like, your legs are not hurting anywhere near as much as Mike's are right now. Like little bits like that just make training that little bit extra and put you into a really dark place. But it's nothing in the scheme of what other people were experiencing in their lives.
So you get to Tokyo, and I want to just hang out a little bit in this winning the gold medal, because, man, like the emotion involved in getting there and everything we've talked about, and then you win gold. Like, where does it come pouring out of you straight after the race? What does the next few hours look like? Yeah,
it was really weird because obviously no crowds, but I'd also felt throughout the week I was building in confidence, and I felt like it was my race to lose in a way. And so on the day I was very much focused on just following process and doing everything that we'd practiced. And I knew that if I did that it would be really hard for anyone to beat me, but there was one element in that race that I was really unsure of, and that was the Russian sculler. So I'd never raced her before in my career. She'd come out of nowhere in the last year, qualified through the last chance regatta, and because we'd had COVID, no opportunity to race her. I knew she was going really, really well. And through the progression of that regatta, she was on the other side of the draw, so I'd not met her. She'd won the other semi-final. So there's always that element when you're heading into a final. Normally, if you've raced everyone, you roughly know where you stand. And so I knew that in that race that, with 500 to go, she was a good 2 or 3 seconds behind me, definite clear water. And in my head at that moment, I thought, she's going to have to do something special here to beat me, because I'm feeling good. I feel like I've got another gear. And so then, as the race went on, it was literally just following kind of all of those processes until when I crossed the line. And in that moment, like, I wish I'd celebrated differently.
What did you do?
Because I have these photos of like my Olympic heroes with their hands in the like Rob Waddell hit. That's iconic. Like, it's up, 2 arms are up in the air and looking up, and I literally just sat there and just did the old just a little fist pump, kind of down low. But on reflection, I'm like, that sums it up. Like, it was just this internal finally, like, you've done what you always knew you could do. And my team was there, my core team on the bank. All of the guys that I had worked with at the International Olympic Committee had all come, and they were there as well. So in terms of crowd, like, Twiggy had the biggest crowd that day because there was no one else in the stands except for the people that had the accreditation to get in. And it was just so special. Like, I just got off and hugged everybody that had come to see me and be there for me. And it was almost just, I just kept touching my medal. I kept on, they're so heavy, and just, it was like this disbelief that I'd finally got there. And then adding to that, bloody Bondi, he comes down in the men's 8 and wins his 3rd Olympic gold and gets off the water. And I feel like sharing it with him was also really cool because we'd literally started as juniors together, and his career had a very different story to mine. And he was, I guess, a bit like Mahe, just like, so he said to the boys as he was rowing up, did Twiggy win? And they were like, yep. And he's like, okay, all good, we're good then. You know, like little bits like that where I'm like, that's so cool that those guys, you know, I guess it's that old story that it isn't about the medal, but it's all these people that have been part of it along the way.
Do you still have dreams of 4th after you win a gold?
I did in Paris again, yeah, because, you know, in my head I was like, oh, I've won the gold medal, but what if I finish with 4th again? Disaster.
Yeah,
it's so bizarre, and I think it's that like that real high performer mentality. But yeah, I did. It was one of the things that I thought about a lot in that period. But yeah,
because are you moving on?
Do you want to stay in Tokyo?
Yeah. I've got a question I love asking people who achieve something like this. Is like, when you finally get around to turning your phone on, right? I'm assuming it's been off, like, when you're competing. What does that look like? How do you deal with it? There's got to be thousands of messages coming in, right?
Yeah, and I do remember it being a late night. We didn't get to party like we would have at other games, and we had a team function, which was equally cool because our team had just had the most successful games. So that was awesome. I remember normally I enjoy a bit of a party, but again that night I was just like, no, I'm just going to cruise around with my medal, like just keep looking at it. I don't need that wine, you know. And we were hopping on a flight the next day, charter flight out back to New Zealand, but. I think I was just in La La Land for a little bit, really.
And the fairy tale would be it. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Did you think about that?
Yeah, it was actually probably what I thought about it most in those couple of days in the village afterwards. Again, like, had this medal, I'd achieved what I'd always wanted to, and there was part of me being like, is it done? Is it, is this, But then I guess I had this really strong pull in that moment that I'd spent 20 years trying to work towards this moment, and I still at that time loved what I did in terms of the team and of people that I had around me, and it became pretty clear pretty quickly that
that was earlier, wasn't it?
touche. We can leave
Pulled
that.
the trigger.
We've got a good relationship, everybody.
That's one of my best.
Where were we? Yeah, no, I did want to go to Paris. It was clear to me early that I wanted to make the most of. I say to people when I speak now, people spend years trying to be a CEO of a company, and that's what I saw myself as an Olympic champion. So why not make the most of that? And I'm so pleased I did. And Mahe again said to me that the 4 years after he defended his title were his most enjoyable because he'd done what he'd wanted to, and that was exactly how it was for me. Except the beauty of it was I only had to hang in there for 3, not 4 years.
But in your mind, is the pressure off, the self-imposed pressure off once you've achieved that gold medal?
Yeah, I think so. I think, forever I can call myself an Olympic champion. But where the pressure comes is the high performer. I'm not doing something just to do it for funsies. And so, again, things changed for me. I became a mum and different priorities in that Olympic campaign, and I knew I had to do it differently. I was getting older, but for sure it was pressure valve off, enjoy it, and what will be, which was a really nice way to be mentally. And I think it made me appreciate the environment that I was in so much more as well, and just the people. I mean, yeah, my career's transcended a lot of generations of rowers. So.
Does much change when you become an Olympic champion here in New Zealand? Like, is there a secret club that you weren't a part of before that you are now?
I
Can't talk about
so,
it.
No.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I mean, old Barbara Kendall sent me a nice message saying, welcome to the club, which, when you have those kind of messages from people who, when you're 12, 13, she's coming into school speaking to you, that's a pretty awesome thing to feel. But again, I think having experienced what I have in my career, Rebecca Waddell is an example to me of someone who's the most amazing person. Sarah Kelly Ross, I can rattle off a million athletes, Olympians.
A million is a lot.
Well, yeah, maybe not a million, but plenty of amazing people that are Olympians who have not won medals, who are just the best humans. And for me, that's far more important than having joined a club.
You don't do many of these podcasts. I'm not sure publicly if you've really spoken about this one much or at all, but if you're open to it, you had a bit of a health scare leading into Paris. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, it was a health scare that turned into be not much really, but it was definitely, I remember catching up with Seamus on the bank at Seddon Park, and I was right in the middle of it, but I had been away in America, I had a pretty busy time, and I'd come back home and I was training, and I had this weird feeling in my heart, like a kind of little zappy pain is how I'd explain it. And I thought, I'm really conscious of my heart because of what we do training wise, and there's been lots of roles that have had little issues along the way. So straight away I just booked into the doc and I was like, can you just have a feel, like this is what I'm experiencing? And she's like, I think it's just, you've just been a bit sick. I think it's this costochondritis, which is when your chest is a bit tight. So we'll take some bloods just to rule out something more serious. And she said the blood test, there's a thing called troponin, which people that know hearts know that it's expressed when you are having a heart attack or your heart is inflamed. And if that comes back in your blood test, then we're in, it's not good. But I'm not worried about it. We're just going to do it as a matter of course. And if you don't hear from me, then get going. So that night I didn't hear from her, but the next morning I had like 3 missed calls on my phone, and she's like, are you on the water? And I'm like, I'm not on the water, I'm on the phone to you. She was stressing. She's like, don't go on the water. You've got this elevated level of troponin. You need to go and see your team doc. Okay, yeah, didn't think anything of it. Went down, and the team doc was sitting there, and I could tell it was bad because she's like welling up. As she was saying to me, she's like, you've got this level of troponin, which means you've got myocarditis. And I was like, what's that? I'd heard about it through COVID. And she was like, it's not good, Emma. Minimum of 3 months of doing absolutely nothing because it's basically an inflammation of the heart. So at the time I was like, okay, what are we now? November, December, January. Oh, yep, still got time. No worries. We'll write off 3 months. And rang our main doctor, and he's a Scottish guy, and he's a pretty positive dude. And so I got him on the phone. I said, Stu, have you heard? And he's like, yes, Twiggy, it's not good. Good accent?
Yeah, much better than the Q&A version.
Either Scottish or Jamaican.
He said, it's not good.
Or Irish. I think there's an element of Irish in there.
He basically was like, you're not going to be in Paris, but we need you to go and have a scan on your heart. So anyway, long and the short of it, I went and had a cardiac MRI, and that came back perfectly clear. And so they're scratching their head going, what is this? And couldn't get in to see a cardiologist for about a month, and eventually went to the cardiologist, and they said, yeah, it seems like you've got this elevated level of troponin in your blood. It can happen through like serious exercise, so I might have stressed my heart at some point, or it might just be your normal levels, and we think you're all good, so get going. So I went from thinking my career was done to second life, which, I mean, again, it just put everything in perspective.
Yeah. How did it change your perspective on things?
I think it made me realise why I was doing it again and what was important to me. And the big thing for me was like, I really want to get to my 5th. Like, again, weird thing, but not many people can say that they've been to 5 Olympic Games. And I guess maybe I'd achieved what I'd wanted to in Tokyo. And so this was more about the 5th and being part of the team, and I'd got that many years down the track, and I wanted to finish my career on my terms when I wanted it to, not because my body gave up. And my body has been so good to me through my career as well. So, yeah, it was tough. I remember like doing some gardening because I couldn't even mow the lawn. So like, you can't do that. You can't get your heart rate above 120 or something like that. Bought myself some golf clubs and yeah, I mean, there's a silver lining to everything.
Yeah. Okay, so Paris, you're going there. Obviously, gold is the goal. You finished with silver. Like, how did you go in thinking about that, and how did you respond when you get silver?
I think my reaction to my silver in Paris was, it summed up how I felt, which was actually elation. Again, I'd had a few little niggles in the lead up, so that the lead into Paris hadn't been being spot on, but it had still been really good, and I'd still been super proud of the way that we'd built. I knew after Tokyo that we would have to do things a bit differently, becoming a mum, that, you know, the added time pressures and things there. And the goal was always to kind of step up every year. And I really felt that we'd done that, and we'd designed my program really well. Adding to that, I had this competition with Caroline Florijn, who's the Dutch sculler, and she really set the standard from year one after Tokyo. And we'd formed a really great friendship in those few years. And I knew that she was going to be tough to beat. No one had beaten her in that Olympic cycle. And I'd been the closest. I'd been silver the whole way through. And we'd also formed quite a close relationship with Tara Rigney, who's the Aussie girl. And it had been the three of us on the podium the whole way through that cycle. So again, for me, I knew that if I raced my best race, that I'd be in with a shot of winning. And as the regatta progressed, I felt like I was getting better and better and better. And on the day, we formulated a plan, and I felt like I just went out there and gave it absolutely everything. And no one had pushed Carolyn to the extent that I had. And I watched the race back, and the high performer in me looks at it in the last 250 and goes, shit, like, could you have done anything more? Because I was, it's right there. I'd made some massive gains on her early. But then I quickly hop on the erg and realise, actually, this is blooming hard, and when you're done, you're done, But I was stoked, and again, my experiences perhaps have shaped how I feel about those Olympic medals, because I just know how hard they are to get. And yeah, silver it's amazing. Silver is a 37-year-old racing a 26-year-old who's at the top of her game, and to be that close. And I think it's easy to be disappointed, and it's a weird thing, because anyone that didn't know me or didn't know the lead-in or the prep may have looked at it and felt that I'd be disappointed with second because I'd won that gold. But take that gold away, and if I'd won a silver medal first time, it would have been huge. It's all about context. And I'm super proud of it.
Yeah, the perspective, it's amazing. What was it like? Because I'm assuming that is going to be your last Olympics as a rower. What's it like with the family and things? Like, that's kind of the end of the chapter, right? Your whole life up until then has been rowing. Now it's going to be something else. That's it. Like, was it really emotional when you got together with family?
Yeah, it was. The thing that was awesome for me at that Games is that was the first time that they'd been there, and there was something to celebrate, because the three before, where there was allowed to be crowds, they'd experienced this devastation afterwards. And so part of me was just so happy that Mum and Dad and Jamie were experiencing the joy of success. And I think there was, on Mum's behalf, she's hilarious. She can't watch. She'll sit in the stand and focus on what's in front of her and wait until I row past her, and Jamie will be commentating the whole way down to her. She's just an absolute wreck. So I think from her perspective, there's probably a whole lot of relief. I think Mum for years is wanting me to just chill out and do something that's not so hard on my body and all of that. But to be there, and to Dad was blooming cute. He always is. And it was really emotional. I think that we had the New Zealand team photographers there, and they got some pretty cool shots of just, I guess, what it means to them too, which is, they've been at all of it. They've been through highs, lows. Yeah.
There's another young fella there as well.
He was a bit oblivious.
Was he? I mean, does that add a different perspective to it as well? No, because we had Cam Leslie on here talking about his Paralympics experience and how stoked he would be that his kids would be able to see him, or at least have memories in later life of seeing their parent at a Games like that. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, definitely. And although he's oblivious, he knows what rowing is. He knows Mama is rowing, and that's her job. And for months leading up to it, we're like, where's Mama? And he'll go, Paris, even to this day. Mama rowing in Paris? I was like, no, Paris has been Tommy. But, little bits when they start to understand what you actually do is really cool. And he'll forever be able to look back and yeah, that'll be part of the story. But I think it's actually more being the mother and, I realise I look back on Eric and that who kind of paved the way in terms of being parents in our program. And there's a huge amount that you don't see that until you're a parent and experience that juggle and around high performance sport. And we go from a very, very selfish pursuit to all of a sudden it's still a selfish pursuit, and you need to give your full self to it, but you also have something else that you've got to give your full self to too. So and now we're at the point where we've got Luce and Brooke who carried and have come back and proved that you can be the best in the world. So it's really cool.
How does that juggle differ with parenthood in the middle of all of the training and everything? Like, you already seem to have like a limited window. Like, is it even how do you find time to sleep and hang out and that sort of stuff, or is it just all out the window? I mean, I guess is that parenting anyway?
Yeah.
Make it work.
Yeah, make it work. And we actually adapted what we did training-wise, because you just physically can't do the same load because you're not getting the same sleep. Or actually, funnily enough, I had a DEXA scan, which is they measure your muscle mass, and I'd had one done pre-Tommy and post-Tommy. And my physiologist was looking at it and she was like, you've got much bigger mass on your left side than your right side. And she was scratching her head and we're trying to figure it out. But like you have a side that you pick your kid up to, every time. And little bits like that when you're an elite athlete, you've got to actually be conscious of that, because if you do that too many times, are you going to go and get a rib stress fracture when you're on the water? Like, there's just so many elements to parenthood, and merging that with being an elite athlete where they actually don't go that well together. But it's testament to the people that make it work, because I think without the perspective of parents around us as well who are tailoring and tweaking and understand the demands, it allows it to be successful.
And then to extrapolate that point out a little bit, like, how important is that in terms of like leaving a legacy for others to follow and for others to be parents in high performance sport? Like, you credit or talk about Eric and Hamish who have done it, and now you've done it as well. Like, that part of making things better for people coming through, is that a big part of the latter part of your career?
Yeah, I think so. And like Eric, I look back to that mentality of that bunch of people at that time, and he was not even going to be allowed to come back for his child's birth. I think he spoke about that on his podcast. That wouldn't even be a thing now. And I think that's because people like him have been before, but also because we're now challenging the norms within high performance sport and saying, actually, our value is, it's like investing in your key assets in a business. If you see us as valuable for the program and at the next Olympics, then the investment is not just in us as athletes, but it's also our families, because if that's not taken care of, they're not going to perform. And yeah, I mean, we've come a long way, and there's even more that could be done. But I think it's also testament to the program that has said, actually, yeah, that's true. We do need to have the caregivers there so that our athletes can do what they need to do. Because yeah, I mean, Lucy and Brooke are great examples of being able to come back and probably perform better than they have. And actually, I think probably having the kids has brought balance to their rowing schedules and allowed them to be successful in a funny way.
So is that advocacy kind of part of it something that's going to be in your immediate future?
I'll always advocate for athletes. I think I'm one for like justice and on black and white, and I always if someone needs me to go in and kind of back them up or articulate something that they possibly can't, I'm always going to be there for that. But I think in general it's, again, having the ability. I think 10, 15 years ago I wouldn't have gone in and demanded or requested what I have in terms of the support for families. But when you get to a place where you can call yourself an Olympic champion and you have an ability to kind of push the box and create that legacy, then I think that's a great space to be in.
You're in pretty steady footing, 5 Olympics, and you've won an Olympic gold and Olympic silver. Like, if you can't speak out and defend it, then who can?
Yeah, and that's my thing too, is like, that's what I kind of say to the administrators out there. Like, it's all very well me going in there and having the ability and the clout to, and even sometimes I feel like I'm asking for the world, but for a young athlete to go and properly be able to ask or request or express themselves is really difficult, and that's where our system, I think, needs the support to kind of create that independence of representation.
Just on like actual nuts and bolts of what your training schedule looked like. Like I'm keen to talk about like tonks and training methods and overtraining and mindset. But what are, like, if you could average out a regular week when you were right in the middle of it, like how much are you training? How much are you in the boat? What does a week look like?
I mean, it's changed significantly over my career. My early days, we were doing upwards of 200k under dick tonks, and it would be all rowing specific. Whereas now, into the back end of my career, we're doing between 16 and 26 hours in a week, and it would be a mixture of rowing, cycling, weights, much more holistic, I'd say, and balanced. But yeah, I mean, the full hardcore weeks, it's 100% a full-time job, and you've got factored into that is all the massage and the kind of support around that. But yeah, it's crazy to think that my job for 20 years has been punishing my body like that week in, week out. And in a rower's life, we get 2 or 3 weeks off in a year. But I think one of the cool things that I reflect on is that in my early days, there was a hell of a lot of training, a hell of a lot of base that has set me up to keep calling upon that base. But I've changed and tweaked and adapted and done things differently as I've got older, and science has allowed me to do that as well, and the support that we have in our program has allowed me to do that as well.
Yeah, so how do you reflect on that 200k weeks with dick tonks? Like, was that overtraining? Did that harden you up to go on to what you wanted to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of different schools of thought around that, and when I reflect, I definitely think it wasn't me in the best sense of me. I think I look back and I think that set me up, and the Ks that I did, it was a time and place type thing. But when it came to my pinnacle performance, I think there was a lot that could have been better and kind of more tailored, and I was a little bit broken, I think, at times, or definitely in my younger days, and that's what I've got better at, is kind of acknowledging what I do and don't need. But still keeping the element, like in our sport, the work you put in is what you get out. There's no shortcuts, and that's something I acknowledge even more as I get older. And young Emma would want to be on her bike for 7 or 8 hours training, whereas now I'm like, 20 minutes of body weight workout is just enough. Yeah. So there's definitely that hard work element that is necessary, but I think there's a balance as to how you do that, and I think there's ways of doing it which will create a successful athlete mentally and physically. And yeah, some of the methods back in the day and the sessions we did are pretty borderline, in my opinion. Yeah,
so that's kind of like you've understood the extremes, like that's as hard as you can possibly get pushed, and that didn't quite work for you, and then you kind of find you come back a little bit from that, and you find that that's your sweet spot.
Yeah, I think just in general that the program has progressed, right? Science has progressed. The support that we have has progressed. And in 2008, there was still very much a mentality of, and there still is, the miles makes champions, but it wasn't surrounded and supported by science and the care that we now have. And so, yeah, I think it worked in many athletes' cases because they were just built like brick shit houses and they could handle the load. And it's almost like the Darwin approach, like there'll be some that will survive and be successful, but there was many, many, many along the way that weren't, and that it probably went the other way. And I think now, we're shifting. We're maybe shifting too far to the other way, where it's too much about the warm fluffies. But I think ultimately we have such smart and world-class people in our programs that can have enough experience of the old approach and to intertwine that with what we now know with science and all of the analysis that we have of resting heart rate and all these kind of things, that allow you to kind of push right to that limit, but still remain in one piece.
Do you feel like there's part of society or athletes or whatever it is going too far towards those warm fluffies, as you call it? Like, have you noticed a difference in the generations coming through, that they're just different to you and they've got to be treated differently?
I definitely think there's difference. Yes, yeah, I'm not going to say no to that, but I think for me, athlete wellbeing, it's an interesting topic, because I think a lot of that wellbeing can get lost in the warm fluffies, and for me it's actually not about the warm fluffies. It's just about creating environments where athletes feel heard, they understand why they're doing things, they can see benchmarks and precedences, and they have goals and ambitions. In my day, all of that stuff that made us the best should still be there, which is having these benchmarks, having world-class examples, doing things well. But on top of that, you're just turning up into an environment which is happy and healthy and supportive, and there's a lovely culture. And for me, that's well-being. And how is that done? That's done by just treating people like humans and bringing them into conversations and allowing athletes to be part of decisions and understanding why decisions are made. And they're not always going to be the ones making the decisions, but, educate them and bring them along for the ride, and don't just deliver stuff to athletes and expect them to be okay with it. Like, it's being more collaborative, and at the end of the day, an athlete's not in a program to muck around. Like, they're there to be the best that they can be. And so in my world, it would be, how do we enable them to be the best that they can be? And, we're not putting walls up, we're empowering them. And I think if you have created a space like that, and that's how I feel my team allowed me to be successful in Tokyo, it was being open to all of their world-class knowledge, but them also throwing it back to me and being like, it's over to you. We're going to give you all the tools, and then you kind of put it together.
Sounds simple, right? Like,
I think so.
Seems like such obvious, the way you should do it. When you speak out, and not that you have at all in this conversation, but if you speak out about the way Rowing New Zealand is doing something, what does that echo chamber look like? Does that come back to you? Is it hard to speak out on things in rowing world?
I feel like Rowing New Zealand's in a great place at the moment, and it's taken some real time to get there, and I think even people within it will acknowledge that we've been through some ups and downs along the way. I don't think, I think no matter what, like I said before, a young athlete trying to speak up, and when you've got things like selection and things like that on the line, I don't think they'll ever feel like they properly can, which is why I think there needs to be mechanisms in place for them to be supported in those ways. But also I think if the NSO is doing their job right, then they've communicated well to athletes, and they're understanding why they're in the places that they are too. And I think that's where a lot of the issues arise, is that you're looking at a decision and you're like, how did you get here? And in my opinion, that's because there hasn't been the right comms leading up to that. Because actually high performance sport it's pretty simple. Like, a lot of the data is there. It's pretty easy to prove if you're the best or not. It's not ambiguous like a lot of different jobs around the place. So yeah, I think with this, our system has shifted hugely in the 20 or 30 years, and as we're getting better and better people into these positions, perhaps some of that, like that old boys network where things were run, but the way that they had it run in their day is kind of shifting, and we're in a much better spot.
There's no probably better person positioned than you, who's had 5 Olympic campaigns under their belt, to be able to talk to some of that stuff too. So hopefully there's people out there that are open to listening and hearing the athlete perspective.
Yeah, and that's what I'd just encourage anyone in those positions, that just yarn to the athletes. Let's lessen the divide between us and them, and just the way I see it is any workplace, like everyone's in the same team, we're all going for the same goal. But I think a lot of the time in high performance sport there isn't that dialogue. I don't know why, but that's just how it's been.
So we've got that short-term challenge we talked about at the top. You're hanging up the oars, but you've got a new goal. But
a set of oars.
A set of oars.
Actually, the same type of oar.
Is it?
Detail.
We're not hanging up.
Different
boat. But, and I said this in the panel we did the other day, is that there's so many directions your future can go with the way your experience you've got and your mindset and the way you can articulate your story. Like, what are you thinking about the future? Like, do you have a direction that you think you'll go? Are you open to anything after you've finished sort of competing in sport? Admin roles? Do you think that would be for you?
That's a question I get asked a lot at the moment. I think I spent a lot of my career being really worried about what would be next, which is why I went and did my master's and why I worked and have done various things along the way. Real estate, the works, just added on there.
Boat license.
Yeah. But now I'm kind of in a position where I think where one door shuts, another one will open. But for me, it's actually making sure it's the right thing, because I don't want to do just any old thing. And I'd like to keep learning and kind of developing and being challenged. And I don't know if I'll step straight into sport, certainly probably not rowing admin, but I feel like I also have got all 20 years again worth of experience, which I'd love to be able to help athletes in some way. But personally, I don't know. I'm kind of dabbling in yarning to people from the business world, and like all of your business in between podcasts, like those kind of things spin my wheels, because I feel
Shout out.
I feel like it's you're applying a lot of the principles of setting goals and working towards something and being really passionate about something. That maybe like a smaller business is where I'll end up, but remains to be seen.
Are we canvassing for the people to come to you with propositions?
100%, yeah.
Have you got something you think Emma could help you with?
6 Olympic Games?
Yeah, this is something that was thrown at me a couple of days ago too.
Thoughts?
I'm not opposed to like, the way I see it. I'll pursue coastal until I'm hoping that there's going to be a young, talented athlete that's going to come and beat me along the way, and until that happens, I'll remain pursuing it. And if that means that I end up on a start line in LA, then I do. But equally, if someone's come along and I've helped that person to be better and they're better suited for the job, then that's a win as well. So it's quite a nice place to be in.
So this is ignorance on my side. You went away to Worlds recently?
Yeah, so I've done 2 coastal worlds. Yeah, the last one was in Genoa.
How did you go?
I was 3rd. Yeah. So, who knows?
Complete the set.
Oh no, it's a long. 4 years is a long time.
It's less now. It's only about 3.
3.5. Yeah, no. I mean, Steve Redgrave would always say, done. Yeah, if you want to see me near a boat again. But the way I see it is, I love keeping fit and I love doing what I love. So if coastal rowing is that, then I'm going to keep doing it. But I also want to further my career and further who Emma Twigg is outside of a rowing boat too.
I asked that question to you twice in 5 days, and you say you get asked it a lot. Is it annoying if people are always asking the same thing? Like, what are you going to do now? Like, is it difficult to always have an answer?
I think athlete transition is, it's really tricky, because I've done something that I've been so passionate about and have enjoyed for 20 years, and there's not many professions where when you're at the top of the game, you've just got to stop. And so, we just had a Crossroads conference recently, and every athlete says the same thing. There's always a period of adjustment. There's always a time where you've just got to kind of grind through, because eventually you'll find your feet, and the curve is always exponential in terms of what you learn, and you can learn. But I guess it's being okay with being a little bit of average at something for a period of time. It's like you guys starting out, like you had to grind. And so I guess looking down that barrel is slightly daunting for me, that I am just going to have to be okay with being a bit average for a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. And hopefully I'll find something that spins my wheels like rowing has done.
And I thought you articulated this really well at the Q&A last time, so I'm going to ask the same question again. But if you are an employer looking to bring an athlete transitioning out of high-performance sport on board, what are some things that they can do to help that transition?
I think, again, is take a risk, take a shot on an athlete, because what they lack in qualifications or explicit knowledge, I guess, probably the wrong word, but
What was that?
I'm actually busting for a piss right now.
Oh, man.
I haven't moved for like 4 minutes.
Don't move, please don't move. Yeah, I guess what they lack in that general knowledge of the specific job they will learn. But I would say that an athlete has all of the attributes that employers want in terms of like dedication and, persistence, being there on time, all the things that you learn in sport, and generally are pretty good people to have around the place. So it's just figuring out, everyone's different. Again, that non-cookie cutter approach, and it's figuring out what makes people tick and then getting them in, and I'm sure they would add value. So yeah, I hope that anyone out there that has, any jobs, I think the hard thing as an athlete is that you think you're going to go in and start as an intern, but a lot of what we've done in years and years in sport probably puts us at a higher level, and as an athlete is also having the ability to back yourself and be like, yeah, I'm better than that, I want to start here and I'm going to learn real quick and be valuable to you.
You've joined a pretty exclusive club today, coming on, repeat guests on Between Two Beers. It's been so epic, you've done quite a lot in the 4 years since we last talked. It's been an hour and a half talking about all of the things you've achieved.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't have done the first one.
Nah, sometimes you gotta miss to nail the next one.
Yeah,
you got to kiss the toad before.
Yeah, I think it's slay a dragon to find the princess. I think that's the term.
But yeah, I'm just really proud. I'm really proud of what you've done. It feels like, because we had that chat, and when we come and do these things, and it's like 2 hours, and you feel like you go to some quite intimate areas, I was really invested in your journey. So watching you win gold and watching you win silver, it meant a lot to us. So it's been epic, sharing your story. Thanks for coming in and spending this time with us.
Oh, I feel the same way about you guys. It's fine. Every week I'm listening in my car. I feel like I've been part of that journey too. So yeah, thanks for having me. Round 2.
Do it again in 4 years' time? Should we do a four yearly?
I mean,
you're going to have some.
I don't know that it'll be that interesting.
It'll be the business chapter in 4 years' time.
Business in between.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. No, epic. Thanks so much, Emma. It's been awesome.
Thanks, guys.